Hey guys, so I don't really have anything for you as far as a vlog, but I did want to do a video for this week, so I don't fall back into the habit of not doing anything. So today I wanted to talk about flaring and dispel the myth that flaring is bad for bettas. And it's one of those myths that just makes you just roll your eyes and go, oh jeez. But people honestly believe that it's bad for bettas, and really that's coming from people that don't understand what flaring is and what the benefits are to it. So let's talk about the myth first. The myth is, say hi pretty. The myth is that there's kind of two versions of it. The first version is that don't ever let a betta see another betta because it will be stressed. That's partially kind of like 10% true. The other myth, or the kind of like similar myth, is don't ever let bettas flare at each other because it's stressful. I remember when I used to frequent pet forums and pet groups, if a fish would like find his reflection in a corner of a tank and flare at it, people would say, oh my gosh, you need to blacken that part out, you need to put plants there because he's flaring at that spot because he could see his reflection. And it's just nonsense, to be honest. Flaring is not bad for bettas, like plain and simple. So let's talk about the other half of that myth. Seeing other bettas is stressful. And as I said, like we can give like 10% credence to that myth. Some bettas can become stressed out if they are constantly in view of other bettas, especially if they are not as aggressive. So if we look at this Milano guy over here who's hiding behind his leaf, or behind his thermostat, he's more laid back. He will flare and move around, but for the most part, he likes to lay on his leaf. He's an older male. He is a long fin half moon, so obviously he's got those fins he has to drag around. And so for the most part, he's not going to be as active as this plakat, who is younger. He's got short fins, he's more vigorous, and this guy loves to flare. Like, he's just looking at the camera, he's already flaring his fins. So if I were to keep this card open at all times, this guy wouldn't care. He'd flare all day long, be perfectly happy. This guy would end up getting stressed out, or he would just stay over in this corner. He wouldn't use his tank to the full advantage because he doesn't want to constantly be flared at by this other fish. Now he will come down and flare a little bit, and then he kind of moves on. He really would rather flare at a female anyway. If I put a female near his tank, he flares a lot more, but for the most part, he just kind of lays there on his leaf. That's what he does. So if I were to leave them uncarded all the time, it's possible that this black male on the right could get stressed out. This one, I could put another fish next to him that flared all day long, like he flares all day long. Neither one of them would get stressed out. So that's where I say there's a 10% truth to that myth that seeing other bettas stresses them out. Now let's talk more about the subject of flaring, because that's where there really is a big myth that flaring is bad for them. Flaring is what this guy is doing right now, if I can get him to focus. He's opening up his fins, and when he's fully flared, he'll actually open up his gill flaps, his operculum, and he'll extend his beard. See, there he goes. The silver kind of cheeky parts to him, the parts that look like his cheeks, that's his operculum, or his gill covers. this black kind of membrane that comes out from under it, that's his beard. And excuse me, can't remember what it's called, like the technical term, might just be gill membrane, but basically operculum are the gill covers, the hard covers, and then that kind of piece of skin or membrane that comes out from the bottom is called the beard. Both male and female bettas have beards. Female bettas generally have very small ones, but they can have big ones. Especially now, you see a lot more masculine female bettas, especially half moons. This guy's coming out. He's so pretty. You will see females with the bigger beards, but in general, female small beard, males big beards. So that's what flaring is. Now, is it stressful for them? The short answer is no, it's not. It's very healthy. It's a way for them to get exercise. It's a way to help them digest food. Often, when they're flaring, they will poop. So it helps prevent them being constipated. And that's kind of the things that, it's kind of one of the things that I see a lot in like pet forums and groups. People don't flare their fish. They're fed a lot of not so good quality pellets, or just pellets in general. All pellets have wheat and fillers and stuff in them. And all that kind of stuff leads to constipation. And you know, you're not flaring your fish so he can have an easier time passing food, and you're feeding him all this stuff that's got ingredients that he can't digest. You know, it's no wonder that so many people have issues with constipation. I never have issues with constipation. I feed pellets, you know, probably 50% of the time right now. And never, ever, not once have I had a constipation issue in my fish, because they, you know, they flare, they have the right temperature and all that, and, you know, it's just not an issue. So flaring can really help with that. So it's good exercise. It helps them digest and pass their food, and it helps them be more outgoing too. A fish that will flare is more likely to come up and look at you and interact with you than a fish that doesn't like to flare. So like this boy, for example, he's not scared of me. He's not, you know, scared of his neighbor, but he doesn't really like to flare. He's just kind of lazy. So, you know, if I was gonna pick a fish to go live on my desk or something, I'm much more likely to pick this guy who, you know, will flare at my finger and come out and see me. And, you know, if I get a pen and I stick a pen near his tank, he's going to flare at it. You know, he's much more interactive and fun than this guy who just kind of wants to live on his leaf, and that's what he wants to do. So, flaring is not, it's not stressful for them. It's good exercise, both in a big tank or a jar, and it helps them stretch out their fins when you have a growing fish, so they can reach their fullest potential as far as their form goes. Being able to stretch out those fins and get that really nice shape that we look for. Especially on half moons like this guy. And I wish this guy wasn't tired and wanted to flare for us. Maybe if I give him the mirror. Sometimes he would rather flare at a mirror. And that brings me to another point. If you don't have another fish to flare your betta with, a mirror works great. And Zoo Med actually makes these little mirrors that float in the tank, and you can stick it in there for 10 or 15 minutes a day. Oh, see, now he's flaring. And let them flare and get their little bit of exercise and then take it out. I don't think it's good for them to constantly be looking at another betta. it can be stressful, or it can just make it so they're used to seeing other fish. See, now he's going. Now he's mad. But, you know, seeing another fish or a mirror 10-15 minutes once or twice a day is good, or keeping them half carded so that they can see another fish if they want to. That's good. So this card's a little bit too big, but say I had a smaller card and I put it in here, they could flare above it if they wanted to flare, and then they could go down below it if they didn't want to see each other. And that's something that a lot of breeders, like Jeanne of Inglorious Bettas, does that a lot with her fish. And I do it occasionally. Sometimes I keep my fish fully carded where they can't see each other unless I remove the card. And sometimes I keep them half carded where they can see each other if they want to. So, it's good exercise. It's very important if you want to show your fish in a show, because they have to flare. That's like the #1 thing. A fish that doesn't flare is not going to be considered the winner. So you might have the best, most beautiful, most amazing fish ever and bring it to a show. If he doesn't flare or she doesn't flare, she's not going to win. And I've seen judges agonize over fish. They want to give, you know, best of show or something so badly to this fish, but he's not flaring. And, you know, that deportment is very highly regarded in shows. And it makes it easier to sell the fish. As I said, you know, if you're buying a fish, do you want one that's opening its fins and being really active and personal, or you want one that's just kind of laying on the bottom and not moving because he's laid back? So that's kind of where flaring really comes in handy. You know, stretches out the fins, it makes them more personable, helps them go to the bathroom, which is a major health benefit, and just makes them more personable overall. When you're talking from a breeding standpoint, it's also really good because at least in my experience, females that are not flare trained are harder to spawn. When I used to keep females in sororities instead of keeping them individually jarred, I noticed that the females took a lot longer to spawn. They were more likely to be intimidated by a male. So that's why I keep my females carded the same way I keep my males. So there's really no big drawbacks to flaring. One might be they can break their fins. Not necessarily on a plakat like we're looking at, but half moons, veil tails, they can tear their fins if they get flaring really hard. When they get going, oops, my lights just went out. My timers are messed up because it's not late. When a half moon or a long fin fish gets flaring and really going and swimming around, they can actually rip their fins. But generally, if they rip it while they're flaring, it's going to heal back up in a day or two. It doesn't hurt the fish. It's just them stretching their fins out so far that the webbing separates from the rays. This guy's had enough of us and now he's hiding. I've been trying to take this video for about an hour now, and I kept going into rants about stuff. So all the fish are really tired right now of flaring. So really, ripping fins, that's the only drawback. Fin biting, that can happen if the fish is flared too much. In my experience, though, generally that only happens in like divided tanks where they can constantly see the other male. They get stressed out and they bite their fins. I really haven't had any issues with fin biting in years and years. And to be very honest, I had more issue with fin biting when I kept my fish in bigger tanks. We're not going to get into that right now. But, yeah, really the only small drawback to flaring is that they can sometimes rip their fins a little bit, but generally grows right back, no problem. So I just want to kind of talk a little bit about that, kind of try and dispel that myth somewhat that flaring is bad for bettas. And, you know, in the end, it's got to be up to you what you want to do. I can tell you that studies have shown that bettas that were given stimulation via a mirror or another betta had better health and longevity in the study that I read over the fish that were kept in solitary confinement or that were not exercised via this mirror or this other betta. So there's actual, you know, literal legitimate studies that have been done that have shown that giving the betta this exercise is beneficial to them. So, you know, take with that with what you will. If you don't flare your bettas and you think he's perfectly healthy or she's perfectly healthy, she might be or he might be. But definitely don't think that just because someone lets their bettas flare at each other or exercises them or anything like that, that it's at all unhealthy for them. It's really not. It's very healthy. It's something I do every day, twice a day. And then as you can see, some of them get so used to flaring that they'll flare at your finger, at you, at anything. This guy is one of them. He likes to flare at everything. I've even caught him flaring at my big cichlid Susie before. So that's all. Just a little bit of a mini rant, mini lecture about flaring. Take with it what you will. If you're not already, you know, giving your bettas time to flare at a mirror or at another betta, start doing it and see if you like it. I can honestly say that I've experimented with, oh, the cat wants to be in the video. I've experimented with keeping my fish uncarded where they can see each other all the time. I've experimented with keeping my fish carded at all times and just pulling the cards a couple times a day so they can flare, and the rest of the time they can't see any other fish. And I've experimented with kind of what Jeanne does and other people where they're carded but there's a small gap in which they can see each other through. And in my experience, the fish do the best when they're either fully carded and they're given a chance to flare a couple times a day, or if they're partially carded where they have a little bit of room. And I need to fill these tanks up a little bit more. They've evaporated a bit, but usually there's, you know, about a ½ inch that these two can get up there and flare at each other if they want to. And, you know, in general, in my experience, the fish that flare, they live longer, they're more healthy, they're more vibrant, they're more personable. Anytime I go to a fish show, the fish that people are like looking at the most are the ones that are like paying attention to them and flaring at their fingers, not the ones that are stressed out and won't flare or do anything. So that's all. If you want tips or tricks on teaching your betta how to flare, you know, you want to know how often you should flare your betta or how long or anything like that, feel free to ask me in the comments. I'll try to get back to everyone. I don't check comments daily. I try to check them once a week or so and go back through and answer everybody. But, you know, as always, feel free to comment, message me on Facebook if you feel like you need more one-on-one information or help with anything on your Betta, and I'll see you guys next week. Hopefully next week I'll have some new spawns to show you, or I'll be setting up spawns and we can do another vlog. So hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you guys next time.